Zinc Comics presents, live from Darshan Studios, Exposition with Brian Payne. Welcome to the show today, folks. I'm joined in the studio today by two of my cartoonist cohorts. We have Mr. Doug Holverson.
Hello.
And Joe Krejci.
Hello.
Welcome to the show, fellas. First thing I wanted to get into is I'm not sure how I met both of you, but I think it dates back to finding your comics online. I know that, Doug, you used to be on Webcomic Nation, and I'm pretty sure that's where I became aware of your work.
Okay. Yeah, and some of that was like old 80s stuff scanned and reposted.
Yeah, and that would have been, I would have found that I was probably on the reservation living in with the Navajo, and that would have probably been, I don't know, 2006 or so, maybe. And I have to think that's where I became aware of your work too, Joe. But it was probably on Drunk Duck, or Simply the Duck, or one of the. There's many.
Yeah, it was Drunk Duck originally. Yeah, they had some problems and changed names a couple times over the years.
Okay, there's a bunch of these sites for those people who don't know, but Drunk Duck, Tapas, Smack Jeeves, Comic Fury, Webtoons, but the original webcomic hosting site was Webcomic Nation. After Joey Manley sold it, it was never quite the same and became kind of a ghost ship where you could post, but nobody was really seeing what you were posting. And but it was a great place to become aware of cartoons and comics. And so I know for a fact that, did you guys use all of them, or did you only try a couple?
I only used a couple. I used Webcomics Nation until they kind of fell apart. Then a few years ago, I started posting on the Duck.
Okay. I believe you're on quite a few of them, aren't you, Joe?
I'm running like 3 or 4. I'm still on the Duck. I've been pushing on Comic Fury. There's also what's the one? Rocket, which is the search engine.
Oh.
Which is well, basically it's just for comics, and you can like sort of thumb mark the ones that you read.
Okay.
And then so you go back to that site, and then you can see the comics that you like instead of sort of jumping site to site to see all these different people. I mean, there are the group sites, but if you start following certain people or meeting people at conventions, you end up starting to go to like 3 or 4 more sites.
Okay. So it's kind of like an RSS feed or whatever that's called, but a little more like a reader for comic reader. You can build your own comic page.
Yeah, you basically you bookmark the ones you like, and it tracks them for you.
Okay. Yeah, I've tried all of them with different things. Sometimes I've reposted different stuff, but right now I'm only doing Webtoons, and I don't know that I'm going to continue with any of them, to be honest. But I'm in a project now where I've been posting on Webtoons, but they all have their benefits and their weaknesses. But I miss Webcomic Nation because there seemed to be more of a community there, where the others I think are lacking. Although I got some good press from the Duck. They featured me one week, and I got a couple people who seemed to really dig the strip. But I just was wondering how you guys utilize that service, because I know that's how something we all share. Now, I myself never learned to drive a car. I've never had a license, and I'm pushing 60. So, and I mean that in age-wise, not with the pedal to the metal. But the reason I chose you two guys to appear on the show together is you both seem to have a love of classic cars. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Okay, you're coming off a little robotic, Joe. So stay close to that router.
Okay. Just to back up for a second,
Sure.
Are you either in the other formats a lot? Like I spend a fair amount of time on Facebook. I have my own page just for the comic. The magazine I actually work for also has a pretty big presence on Facebook itself. And then I've also been pushing on Instagram and a couple of the other just social media sites, which aren't really comic sites, but just more the general sites. And that has also brought in some people that I mean I could otherwise.
I'll let you go first, Doug. I know you're on Facebook. Do you do Instagram or anything like that?
Yeah, I got a Twitter account I mostly ignore, and I'm also on DeviantArt. Got for years, about 15 years there. I did probably about 50 more pictures I should post. I haven't though.
Okay. I've I'm active on Twitter somewhat. I'm good on I got the YouTube channel, and I'm on Facebook. I got several pages there. I've never been smart enough to own a smartphone. So I don't do the Instagram, and that seems to be where the action is nowadays. But by the time I got onto Tumblr, it was becoming obsolete. So I just feel like I'm always one step behind and a dollar short in that regard. But my YouTube channel is Zinc Comics. I do have a Facebook page, Zinc Comics Exposition, as well, just for the TV show, the YouTube channel broadcast. So that's where this will end up being posted originally on Facebook. Yeah. Okay, to get back to what I was talking about, the classic car connection. I know that, Doug, you rebuild cars, correct?
I was a hobbyist. I just got my old Studebakers I dink around with, and I did stick an XR4TI engine into a porthole Pinto.
Okay. Now, as I said, I don't drive a car, so what you're saying is Greek to me, but I'm sure that somebody's out there saying super cool, so I'll say it for them. Super cool. And you, do you do that as well, Joe, or is it more a hope and dream rather than an active pursuit?
I've kind of gone from it being something that I do to more of a hope and dream thing. I used to have a couple Opel GTs, and I used to have a Mustang, and I've worked on several other cars. But right now I have 3 kids and a family, and the fun cars have kind of been evaporating on me.
Right. Okay. I just when Doug said he would be willing to appear on the show, I was like, who could I get to be on with him? And I thought, well, Joe, he draws for Cartoon Magazine. He seems the perfect guy.
I hot rods and that well. I mean, I've been doing shows and stuff and involved with clubs forever. So my personal doing has kind of gone down.
I'm the total opposite because I've never driven a car. I never got a license, so I can appreciate a cool looking car, but that's about it, and that's only if it's parked. Another thing, now, Doug, something that I don't know if you're aware of, I may have told you this before, but we both have an Iowa connection. You were born in Iowa too, correct?
Born and raised.
Yeah. I'm from Atumwa originally
Okay.
myself. So, and I lived in Sheraton and Des Moines at various points in my life. Still got a lot of family back there. I've lived all over, but no matter where I go, Iowa's still home. But you've crossed the river and are now in Nebraska, correct?
Yes, in Omaha.
Yeah, okay. You grew up what, kind of north of Council Bluffs and south of Sioux City or something like that?
Yes, in Soldier, which is pretty much nowhere.
Yeah, that's a small town.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because
And there isn't even in towns like in a farm 3.5 miles due west of there.
Okay. Yeah, I just always, when I see somebody with Iowa next to their name, I highlight that because, like I say, that's always been home. And if they're cartoonists too, that's super cool to me. So now let's talk about what started you off in comics, Doug.
I don't know, things always there. I mean, God, like even before I was in kindergarten, I like, Super Goof and Popeye and stuff. And just,
Okay.
that and Melodo, I can read it all by myself, books. I have cartoon-like illustrations from Dr. Seuss in them. And it just seemed like a natural thing. I mean, even grade school, like do my proto small press, like drawing on typewriter paper, stapled in the middle with felt tip pen or ballpoint.
So you were making comics even as a kid, huh?
Yeah.
And not just drawing cartoons, but actually making publications. That's cool.
Even though they only had like a circulation of one.
Yeah, well, you got to start somewhere. And let's face it, most of the books we produce, we're producing them because there's something we would want to read, and we hope that somebody else would like to read it as well. See, I never read comics as a kid, so I didn't get into it until much later. So I don't have that background. I watch cartoons on TV and read the Sunday Funnies and the occasional Mad magazine. But
yeah, there's a lot of that there too. I mean, it's like three or four of my projects have like a very Hanna-Barbera influence from like the ghetto period from the '70s with a lot of L.A. Takemoto, type influence style and Filmation influence style, and there's also like some of the ornery humor and some of the friend service was inspired by El Cablo Abner.
what is your first actual publication? Was it before Fanboy, or is
Let's see, Paul. Okay, does school paper count or not?
Duo Paper? Is that
The high school paper?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Well, okay. I think I had a fan parody in the '70s called Star Trek.
Okay.
Like like of a '70s another nerd doing a fan parody.
And that was in your school paper?
Yeah.
High school?
Yes.
Okay. That counts. So how did you get into the small press?
It was kind of accident. I just kind of like just some way to get it out, at least the most direct way. When I was in Iowa State in '82, I drew up the first Captain Saucer, took it to print shop. It says like like letter size papers, stapled in the middle, like the comics I did back in grade school or junior high, and
Basically digest size, correct?
yeah, digest, yeah, because Captain Saucer doesn't really miniaturize that well.
How many issues of that? I think I've seen at least 16, maybe even more.
Okay, there are like 2 series of it.
Okay.
It was like the first series where Twinkles was a dragon, and there's no Dee Dee. That had 5 issues. And then there was a second series that went from 1 to 20.
Okay.
And then
Yeah,
it got like, and then it got kind of like a Cerebus retcon reboot, which became Interstellar Overdrive, which is a different story.
but it has its origins with, it's basically a reboot of Captain Saucer then?
Yeah, it's kind of like it was something that wasn't. It was like Captain Saucer, but not a parody. I mean, it had most of the same characters, plus some new characters. And Mars adding characters like Mycon is Revelia. That's a big retcon because Flexia is a mother now and has a teenage daughter and a 5-year-old daughter and a teenage son. And you can't see them really well because in the side of the icon we got Chick Speck.
Well, let's take a look at them then.
Yeah.
That's Flexia there, correct? And
Flexia on the left, and that is a reboot of Captain Saucer on the right.
Okay.
Because there were 2 reboots.
And then on the far right there, that's Joe's work, Barrel of Grease Monkeys.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, where does Fanboy come in?
He was a mostly Captain Saucer filler.
Okay.
And then he had one spin-off. It's kind of like an old shame.
Okay. Now, the first thing I saw was Sci-Fi Guy, which was probably on Webcomic Nation.
Yeah, it's transplanted over to the Duck now.
Okay, it's on the Duck. Okay. So what I really found fascinating, and these might not be your first Sci-Fi Guy strips, but for a time you were doing a strip that was almost like blue mimeograph, or do you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, it's kind of like I said, it's kind of like overcompensating that my high school wasn't that great at. Because I had one good teacher, Lippold, who kind of like, he's kind enough, did the Star Trek. It's kind of kept my brain alive. When I was my freshman year, to suffer through the last 3 years after he was gone, and had a couple not hits for teachers. Took over his job. But anyway, like since my high school kind of didn't have, I said I was in high school in the 70s, and it was a small high school, small community, didn't have a fan scene in it. Kind of overcompensated and made it overly retro on imitating the Ditto copies.
Okay, Ditto copy. That's the word I was looking for, but was escaping me.
Yeah, spirit duplicated, sometimes mistaken for mimeograph.
Yeah.
That's
What's that, Joe?
That's what I was going to say, mimeograph.
Yeah, that's the best I could come up with too.
Yeah, it's kind of like that's kind of like misuse because technically mimeograph uses ink.
Right.
When I do a copy, uses weird wax in the paper and I guess alcohol or some type of spirit, mineral spirits, something like that.
Well, that's what attracted me to your work originally, was that it was Sci-Fi Guy, so it was science fiction based, but it had this real retro feel, and I liked the dichotomy of those two things.
Yeah, because it was based on a lot of contradiction. It's it's called Sci-Fi Guy, so naturally it takes place in the suburbs of Iowa during the disco era, and it's a slice of life with a robot companion, time-traveling cat girl, and a rowdy little green man.
Can't beat it. Okay, what is Tube Punk? Is that a collection of...
That's a collection I've been working on forever and never get done.
Okay, that's what I thought, it was kind of like all your stuff collected.
Yeah, because it was kind of like, Atom Punk, before that was a term, so it was like a term I came up with in the 90s.
Okay.
Everything off cyberpunk, which was like, I think the trend was still going strong then. It might have been a little bit over its peak.
What is your term again?
Basically, I was doing what's now called Atom Punk and what's now called Diesel Punk.
Okay.
back in the back in the 90s, 80s, before they had the name. So I kind of made up the term tube punk
Okay. Tube
as
punk.
because cyberpunk has a computer chip, and I was retro. I had tubes, old school electronics there, because I do have this. Do have an association electronics.
Okay, let's move on to the Inventor and Igor and Malevoland. Are these projects?
Malevoland.
Malevoland.
Yeah, there's a couple of my Saturday morning inspired things, sort of.
Are these works that are in print, or are these things?
No, they're kind of like doing sketches and stuff. Actually, I sort of got off my butt and done animatic for Inventor and Igor years ago. Actually, it's kind of like revived juvenilia that I did in junior high, and I kind of like massage it a lot. Originally, the character did have lots of personality, so I kind of gave them that, and then there was just the three characters. So I kind of like expanded it out for the added community, and so it's kind of like Jay Ward's Blackadder meets Green Acres thing.
I love your dichotomy. You bring in these two disparate things and join them together. That's really unique, I think.
Or like, hey, then you probably love the Captain Saucer reboot.
Yeah,
which is so kind of like has no new cast, but they have a lot of resemblance to the old cast. And I call that, and it's actually somebody gave this to me. Called it Hanna-Barbera meets Russ Meyer.
That's a good tagline. Makes me want to see it. Now I know Leonine, is that it?
Leonine.
Okay. Press is your publishing imprint. But what exactly is Workhorse Comics? Do you want to talk about
that? That's Carl Dabney's company. He's interested in me.
Okay. So you might do something over there as well, but it's still
it'd be a dual imprint, Leonine Press.
Okay.
Workhorse Comics.
Super cool. I'll have links to everybody's work below the video, and I think you should check this out when you get a chance, if you're watching or listening to the broadcast. Let's talk to you a bit, Joe. You there? Okay. Yes. Now, I'm not sure if I'm confusing you with another cartoonist or not, but it seems to me, now I know about Elsewhere, but it seems there was another strip before that. Am I correct or am I wrong?
Not really a series. I used to do a lot of political cartoons and stuff like that.
Okay.
I also started doing the high school newspaper, and I actually ended up becoming involved with the underground paper, and ended up being the editor my last year of the unofficial, unapproved school paper, which was a lot of fun.
That was in high school as well?
And that was in high school as well.
Okay.
And then I started doing political cartoons for the official school paper. Then they had one that was sort of like the student union, which was a lot looser. And I ended up defecting there like after a year or so.
Okay.
And that's kind of when I stopped doing political cartoons and started doing my own stuff.
Was there something between that and Elsewhere that we would know about, or that was in print?
No,
or was
it was literally straight one and the other. I was literally designing Elsewhere while I was still doing the political cartoons. I mean, they were back to back.
Elsewhere is what I mainly know from you, and I'm not sure where I ran across it, but I think that's how we became Facebook friends.
Yeah.
I have the Darshan Studios group page, which is a group artists where they can publish their own creative work on one page. Back in Des Moines during the 90s, I had a Darshan Studios was a actual studio space and a comic art gallery. I bought a house, and I don't know. I know in the Midwest they're fairly common. I'm sure Doug will be familiar. A lot of people had hair salons in their like basement, so like they would. That's what I bought, was a house, but it had a hair salon. So I turned the hair salon into a gallery, and that was the original Darshan Studios. And when I sold the house, I tried to keep the spirit of that alive on Facebook. And that's what the Darshan Studios group is. And you, Joe, are one of the few who posts there regular, or at least more often than not. And I appreciate that.
So try that.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I used to be pretty much weekly, and that's what elsewhere. Elsewhere was kept on at least a once a week schedule. You know, the newer series that has other issues, and I don't get to share it or get to share it right away. So,
do you know how many episodes of Elsewhere you actually have done?
I believe there's about 700 pages.
Okay.
Whoa.
Did it start off?
Well, it started as a college strip, and it went through, you know, that phase. When I was doing it as a college strip, it was actually being picked up by other college papers. So
Okay.
it was running in California, it was running in Arizona, it was running some, you know, multiple locations. When I got done with school, or when I was finishing school, I did the packaging you do for syndication to try to get into the newspapers.
Right.
Requires you have so much material. And basically a reboot at that point, because it would be for an audience who hadn't seen anything before.
Okay.
And that made rounds and never got picked up. And so instead, I went into doing it as a self-published comic book. And that started that. So it really, within a year of being out of college, I was already self-publishing.
Okay. Were those original strips that you did black and white?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe that's what I'm remembering. Did you ever publish them online?
Yeah, you can find those online still.
Okay.
Actually, I did it on whatchamacallit, on what's the one site we're talking about?
Webcomic Nation?
On Comic Fury. On Comic Fury, I actually have one site or one page, which is the original college strips, all in order, and then there's a second page, which is all the new stuff. So basically, from the syndication packet up until the stuff I was drawing about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And that's all on there also.
Yeah, I was amazed by your schedule, because you were very punctual and always had a new strip. But then along comes Cartoon Magazine. That's one of the first comics I ever saw. A friend of mine from childhood, his older brother was kind of a motorhead, and he had cartoon magazines laying around. And I remember leafing through them very early on and thinking they were cool. But again, you know, cars was never my thing. So they kind of went over my head. But yeah, I think it's very cool that you're drawing for them now. How did that come about?
Well, the situation with the magazine itself, which you kind of have to explain first, is the magazine started in '59, and it was through the same company that did Hot Rod and Peterson Publishing. Thank you. Yeah, I was trying to remember the name. And it ran at Peterson until the earlier mid-'90s. And that's kind of the period when Peterson started shuttering a lot of its magazines, and they were kind of looking towards that museum, you know, and we're kind of getting out. They were getting rid of the magazines that weren't doing as their high performers. And basically the rights for that and a bunch of stuff got bought up by another company.
So it's revived.
Trademarks only last so long if you don't use them. And the trademark lapsed on it. The person who actually started the magazine was searching and found that the rights had lapsed, and started producing the magazine and bought the rights, which has forever pissed off this one major publisher, which we will not name by name.
Okay.
No, it's legal, but they're not our pets. So the magazine started up about 4 or 5 years ago now, as a bi-monthly, and then I got involved with them a couple years ago. I was bugging them actually when they first started, and they were trying to get a lot of the original names back, so they weren't hot to give out those slots to other people.
Right.
But then over time, when they kind of got a better idea of who they had and didn't have, like a year or two later, that's when I finally got in on it.
Okay, and I've seen you go by the moniker Crazy Joe and Weird Joe. Which one have you settled on?
I wanted to do Weird Joe Crazy because no one can pronounce my last name.
Right.
Part of the reason I'm looking for something anyway. I mean, I've had people who've read my stuff for 30 years and they still can't say my last name. So my last name totally works against me. It does. For convenience's sake, it's become Weird Joe and then just Krejci, my real last name, and that has to mainly do with paperwork for like conventions and stuff.
Okay.
Having a pseudonym or having a different last name causes paperwork headaches.
Well,
So.
you've joined a lot. You know, there's quite a pantheon. I can't think of all the names, but I know there's some heavy hitters that came through Cartoon Magazine. So, do you know of any of the guys from the past who I might recognize their names?
Oh gosh, there's Steve Miller. There's I'm blanking now. Some terrible names.
Yeah, I know there's somebody who like we would all know, and even the non-casual reader would know.
There's the artist who did Crash and Bernstein. He also did stuff for Hot Rod and for Carcraft, like back in like the 60s through the 80s. You have a couple people that ended up at Mad Magazine, but not like any of the huge names.
Okay.
Affecting over there. I mean, this was at the same time too. I mean, Cartoons was kind of response to Mad Magazine. Mad Magazine kind of came out of the blue when it came out, and then you see like a bunch of other humor magazines sort of popping up the next 2 or 3 years afterwards, after it kind of like showed that it would work.
Right.
Other people started sort of jump on it and started doing their own versions.
Yeah, that's weird because my aunt, my mom's sister, always liked Mad Magazine, and her kid, my cousin Mark, that's where I first would see Mad Magazine. But I almost think I saw Cartoon Magazine, cartoons before that, but my memory is a little foggy, so I'm not sure. But
yeah.
So sure, Doug, you got something?
Yeah, I kind of discovered both at about the same time, around 10 years old.
Okay.
And that was back when I went to Unk and the Varmints.
And the Varmint?
Unk and the Varmints, yeah. It's sort of like Big Daddy Routh and the Finks Light.
Okay.
It's a kind of knockoff.
I'm gonna have to look into this.
I was gonna say that's right after like Big Daddy Roth was involved for a while, but not like too involved.
I think that's when after he dropped out, so they had an imitation.
Yeah. Well, that's like I say, that's quite a legacy to join that magazine. When I saw that you were becoming one of their cartoonists, I thought, I was living vicariously through you and cheered because you're a member of Darshan Studio Group. So I was like, yes. So
it was a very weird. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I said it's a very weird situation. I've been drawing elsewhere on and off for, oh gosh, probably about 30 years. It's really had its chance to like bloom and thrive, and it hasn't. Um, but it's like I've gone from that, and within like a half a year or a year, I'd say more people know me better through the new series, the Barrel Grease Monkeys, than do through the Elsewhere series. And it's really weird because same person, and I'm doing the same type of work for the most part, quality wise. And it's like all of a sudden I'm somewhat notable.
Well, that's good because the cartoon magazine is, that does pack a wallop. That adds like some clout to your cartooning. Is Elsewhere on hiatus at the moment while you pursue this new career in cartoon magazine?
Yeah, unfortunately, Elsewhere, I was trying to kind of do both, and I ended up just having to put it on hiatus. It takes a lot to start a new series, and like even now, it's like I'm getting better at doing the Barrel of Grease Monkeys, but the way I'm doing them, and especially all the stories, a lot like the old magazines where I'll do parodies, I'll do musicals, I'll do all these different styles of stories. It's not like the same one over and over again. It's a bunch of different things. When you get a different one, basically, and it does sort of chew up on time. So, and then there's like the marketing too. It's like I'm trying to get the first book. Beginning of next year, I should have the first reprint book out, which will be the first 2 years of material, which should be around 64 pages. I'm also on Redbubble, and I've been starting to set up like T-shirts and mugs and all that stuff. I can't afford to produce all the goodies myself, all the merchandise myself, but I can go through an online printer, and basically if someone decides they want to buy a Barrel Grease Monkey shirt, they can go to that website, they can choose the design out of the designs I've done, and they can choose what shirt they want, and the company will print it and send it directly to them.
Cool.
And I get a couple dollars, a couple bucks profit, and the person gets the product they want. And I'm not putting a bunch. So it's a really nice deal.
Yeah.
Waste time.
So after hearing Joe's story, do you have any questions for him, Doug, or are you just kind of there?
This thing is kind of weird being here with Mad's winding down and cartoons revived.
That is a good observation. Mad is going sadly the way of the dodo, and cartoons is back. So that gives us some hope for Mad though as well. But
it's beyond weird. I mean, especially if you compare the two magazines. I mean, cartoons. I mean, we're struggling and kind of making it. Mad Magazine outsells pretty much any comic on the market still right now, and the fact that they're deciding to fold it is just kind of, it's more of a corporate decision and more of a bean counter decision. Like someone that's involved in comics or involved in magazines would be looking at their numbers and be happy, but for whatever reason, the company that owns them isn't.
Well, what was cool about Mad was there were some good cartoonists who were starting to contribute again.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Mad was getting a new stable. Noah Van Sciver and Doug, who's our friend from Iowa, who
Pat Moriarty, old college buddy.
Yeah, Pat Moriarty was becoming a Mad artist. I always
there's the one. Do you know the one who put out a cartooning on how to draw a character book the last year or two? I can't think of his name.
That I cannot.
But you can look it up, and he is outstanding. His work has been outstanding. There are some really good artists in Mad Magazine. It's not like it's really plain the lack of quality. It really, I think, kind of comes down to the business and the numbers.
Right.
And all the are hurting. And like cartoons is stuck black and white, and that's solely. It's nice and it's traditional. And the original magazine was, but the real reason is it comes down to the printing cost.
Right.
And can't afford to triple the cost to have color.
Right.
So, or magazine is stayed full color. They've dropped all their advertising or most of their advertising, and it just makes it that much harder on them. I really hope that someone swings it around and it comes back, because it's just kind of heartbreaking. And like one of the artists, I forget who it was, he said, that he was working on this stuff for the magazine. It's like, well, these are the last like movie parodies, these are the last show parodies, because even if they continue to do some new work, they're not going to be doing the parodies. Those are pretty much out, at least for right now. And and those to me were always like the strongest thing. I mean, I have like the reprints, and even the old shows I don't know that well. Just that the quality that they would do in twisting those stories around are great. And like I said, some of the monkey stories I try to get back there. And I did a Blues Brothers recently. I did like an 8-page story that's basically the Blues Brothers movie, but twisted around to the story I needed to tell, but it still has a lot of the original meat in there. And I hate to see that skill kind of drift off.
Yeah, those mad parodies, movie parodies, I remember some of them more than I remember the movie. I know they did one with Billy Jack, and they got the rich kid in bed with Lucy Van Pelt from the Peanuts, and that just cracked me up as a kid, that. Okay, I wanted to ask Doug, you said you were you went to college with Pat, correct?
Yes, right.
Did you share a love of comics at that time together?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's another one that I was aware of his work from Real Stuff or whatever the
Real Stuff. It kind of goes back to actually first one I think for the map was Popcorn Pimps.
Okay.
And I think that was in Centrifugal Bumble Puppy, but I'm not sure.
Okay. I knew him from his the work with who's the Seattle's Harvey Picar?
Yeah.
Eichhorn? Dennis Eichhorn?
Yeah, I did some Real Stuff.
Yeah, he that's where I first knew him, and I didn't know he was from Iowa at that time, but when I found out he was from Iowa again, his name got highlighted on my.
Yeah, he's lucky. He kind of like moved to Minneapolis right out of college.
Okay.
Like the day before it became the alt rock capital of America, and then he like moved to Seattle right before it moved to before it became the alt rock capital of America. When things got stupid and contagious.
So it's all his fault. Wherever he goes. But yeah, I knew that you were friends with him, and I always thought that was cool.
Yeah, like my little story is like he wasn't sure he was going to make it as a cartoonist, and I was certain I was. He's like a Golden Tootie winner, has his film out. China Media and all full guy, and I fixed mail sorting machine for the post office.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you, Doug. I can relate to your story all too well. Yeah, I didn't get into cartooning until I was in a sign painting school. And somebody came in and wanted someone to letter their comic. And when I was lettering this guy's comic, I realized, well, I could do this. And that's what got me into comics. But, I was already in my 20s at that time. So.
Oh, I was the opposite. I mean, like I said, I was doing the high school newspaper. Actually, when I started high school, or the summer before I started high school, I went to San Diego Comic-Con with a couple friends.
Cool.
And then this was back when it was small and people didn't know about it. But and that was like our end of summer thing. and it would have been, oh gosh, like mid
The
80s.
70s.
But I mean, that was a huge influence. I mean, actually meaning that people have been drawing stuff and actually seeing, a product and seeing pages and being involved with that. That was definitely sort of a fire under my rear to get more involved and get going on it.
Doug asked, was that in the 70s when you were at San Diego?
No, it would have been 80, about 84.
Okay.
About 80.
Oh. We could have accidentally bumped into each other, but probably didn't. I was out there in 84. That's the only one I've been to. Which is another story of missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Conventions are worth doing if you find good ones. I mean, I'm at the point where it's like I just found out that I'm probably not getting tickets for San Diego Comic-Con, and I'm not that sad about it. It is so big and so bloated and so overdone.
Yeah.
It's what's really great about it. They have another one they call like the Comics Fest down there, the San Diego Comics Fest, and it's like an old convention. I mean, they have a hotel and they rent out a couple areas, but I mean, people just hang out and talk to each other, and most of the people are artists and publishers, and it's wonderful. And at this point, you want to find the smaller shows that kind of cater to the actual thing, but the ones that are bringing in like the big Hollywood names and the big companies, and don't really help promote the little guys at all. And I mean, really, there's a whole different vibe to them.
There's a lot of good small press cons though as well for the little guys. I refer to myself as a cartoonist from beneath the underground, so I'm too little for even them. But I was at the Iowa Con once in Iowa 2 years running, but
that in Iowa City or
that was in Des Moines.
Okay, I think I was. God, which one? I was at DemoCon. I think the first one. That's about it.
Yeah. The first con I was at, I sat next to guy who does Skyscrapers of the Midwest, Josh. Oh,
I know the book. I can't come up with the name.
Yeah, I should know. Let's see here. It's Josh Cotter. That's his name. I had to hit my head a couple times to get it to come out. But I sat next to him when Skyscrapers of the Midwest, had just put out his first mini comic chapter of that. And I knew right then that he was going to be big. I could tell that this work was going to go on and be something. So it is nice. I was only at those two cons, and I still have friends from those that I met there that I still consider friends today. So cons are nice in that way, to have the communication with your fellow artists, because let's face it, we're kind of in our own worlds. And that's why I like this show, because I'm up here in Alaska, and, my wife gets tired of hearing me talk about comics and has really not the same interest I do. So it's nice to be able to talk to folks such as yourself about this subject.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was also going to say that the cons are really good sort of on the business end some too. I picked up most of my distributors, Capital, and then later Diamond. Conventions, basically. And, also with publishers, most of the publishers, the printers that I've used have been through recommendations for other artists who've already been printing their own stuff. So there is that end of it too. And it's a big expense, and some people are not nearly conveniently located, but they end up usually being worth it.
Yeah. Well, while we're on the subject, we got a few minutes left. Doug, are you a traditionalist? Do you use ink and paper, or are you digital? Or talk about your process.
I kind of mixed, really.
Okay.
is that yeah, pretty much if I could draw with a white, actually I upgraded a white Nova, but if I could draw with a white Nova, I would. I have to do it in ink and paper because that's how I grew up. But I scan it, tweak it in Photoshop, and do all the coloring and modeling in Photoshop.
Okay.
And I do a lot, and of course you've seen Sci-Fi Guy and others. I do a lot of retro. Sometimes do a lot of retro effects too. Kind of make the extra effort to make something look old and crappy.
What about your lettering? Are you doing that digitally or by hand?
I'm trying to get back to doing it by hand. It usually like Sci-Fi Guy. That was really retro. I was trying to ape what I did back in high school, which was typesetting it in an IBM Selectric. It was Elite Machine by using a pica ball called Orator. Orator, which was like the effect as aping in Sci-Fi Guy.
Yeah, my first strips I had typeset because I wasn't that familiar with comics, and I knew Mad Magazine, and that's the way they did it. So I just figured, oh, that's the way everybody does it.
Yeah, kind of like typed everything except for the Don Martin sound effects.
Right, exactly.
That defies typesetting.
How about you, Joe? What is your process? Is it a little bit of both, or how do you go about it?
It's become a little bit of both, but I try to stay traditional. I will do the pencils by hand. I'll do the inking by hand. I used to ink with brush, and I broke down. And I now use the pens. They have the nice felt pens that have the brush tips that basically do the same quality work without having to start the bottle. You know, and then so actually what I do now is it's changed a little bit. Is I'll do the roughs, I'll do the pencils, and then I usually take the pencils and scan them and do any resizing and organizing I need to do on the computer, and then I print out. I'll go to a place and print them out 100%, and then I'll ink on a clean sheet of paper over those printouts of the pencils. So the ink's going to be nice and clean. You don't have all those things. Also, a lot of times I'll write notes in the pencils, and when I'm doing that work, and when you ink over it, you lose all that. And now I don't. I back to my pencils. If I write notes, if I change dialogues when I was penciling, I can go back to the original artwork, and I still have it. But then I'll end up doing the lettering on the computer, and that's probably also I'll move balloons around. I'll be changing little things on text until the very end. I'll think of a better way to say it, or I'll reword something. So for me to hand letter, A, I'm slow at it, and B, I'm changing stuff too much. Coloring right now, I'm doing it on the computer, which I don't like. I would really like to get to watercoloring, or I'm using markers and pencils, but I'm usually tight for time, so I end up going to the computer because it's faster.
Right. So you guys are, what's that, Doug?
Makes it kind of odd because I do like coloring in the computer because it makes it a lot easier. I mean, it's not doing a hand cut that takes all afternoon or that, and you can also brushes and markers, which I have done for a crappy retro look.
Yeah.
You guys are far beyond me. I'm like totally old school. I can only ink with, I used to ink with a crow quill, but either my paper is shit or my ink is shit, because when I use it now, it spiders all over the place. So I've taken to using microns just because of that. But I think usually it's a combination of the two, but more often than not, it's the paper fault. And I don't do anything on computer. It's all on the page. So, I know that if I added a little bit of color to it, I'd probably get more eyes on it. But I'm old school in the way that I prefer black and white comics, and these new Essential Marvel books and DC Showcase Presents that reprint a bunch of comics in black and white. I find them totally fascinating because they are in black and white. And so
because I'm going to talk about this from personal experience, and on elsewhere when I was doing it, the original stuff was all black and white. The stuff I did for syndication was black and white. Basically, what happened is I did the syndication. I did some stuff. I stopped for a while, and then someone talked to me to put stuff online. That's really what restarted me doing it again. And then once I got done posting what I had, I started drawing new stuff. But then people were pushing, and I kind of watched numbers, and I had all black and white. And then I did a couple color, like Color Sunday ones, and the numbers jumped a lot. At which point I actually kind of, on elsewhere, that's when I kind of started sliding over to full color. And it takes me more, and it actually slowed the number of strips I could get, or the number of pages I could get done. But it seemed to drum up interest and readership by doing that. I mean, right now I'm working for cartoons, like I said, cartoons, print, and black and white. And partly it's a tradition of it, and partly, and I'm with you. I really like the black and white stuff. I really like seeing the artwork in the black and white because it's a lot clearer. But there is a lot of stuff that you can do with color that can help, punch and kind of help with stuff, help it look better and help it work better. And as far as the audiences seem to go, there definitely seems to be a much bigger interest in having the color work, or at least the color and the black and white together. It's like right now, I'm at the point where the stuff I'm putting on the site for sale is mostly color, even though the original comics are black and white. And with this one, I'm kind of looking at it, I'm kind of wondering, even though it's printing black and white, I'm tempted to do it in color. And then the magazine can print it black and white. And if I ever get around to doing the reprint, or when I get around to doing the reprint, or if I end up putting it online, then I have the opportunity to offer it in color. And it also helps push the picture. That's like to say, yeah, you've seen most of these before. Yeah, the book's mostly reprints. But look, instead of having it all black and white, you can now see the same pages, but they're all going to be in color.
Right.
And drive up interest in it because of that.
I know that color definitely attracts readership. It's beyond my means, and I'm kind of I remember something that John Porcellino said in the Comics Journal, and that color is the tool of the man. And I always like that quote. And I think there is some truth to that, but that might just be an excuse because let's face it, Chris Ware, his color is sublime, and I appreciate it, and but there is something that I just find fascinating about the black and white, and that's one reason why I'm having trouble doing anything digital as well. Is it's taken me almost 60 years to get half-assed at drawing in black and white. And now I'm supposed to start over on a Wacom tablet,
No, and there's always a learning curve to that type of stuff too. I'll be honest, someone gave me their old tablet, and it has mostly been sitting, and it's kind of the same thing. And it's part of the issue with like we were talking before. It's like I'm talking to you right now on my phone because I have a Macintosh that's multiple years old, and I can't update it anymore, or else I lose all the Adobe programs that I own.
Right.
I have to start a monthly subscription to have the newer versions. So I'm kind of pinned. And the thing is, well, if I get the new versions, mine are so out of date, I'm going to be learning those programs over. Or my other choice is I update, I get programs I can buy, and then I'm learning all new programs.
Right.
And, it's almost like I really just kind of want to stay where I am as long as I can, because I really don't want to invoke the learning curve that's going to hit when I have to make that next step to whatever it is.
Yeah, that's the trouble with computers is, as Doug says, nothing like an old Studebaker, why can't we have an old Mac, And obviously we can. Yeah, obviously we can.
Macs used to be really good about being backwards compatible. When I was in school, like in the 80s and 90s, I mean, you could have software that was 10 years old. You could run stuff that was designed for black and white Macs on the color ones.
Yeah.
I mean, it was almost insane how far backwards you could go. And all that, you know, with the marketing and the this and the that and the trendiness, it's gone away, and they don't support very far back. And it's like, it seems like within 4 or 5 years, you're already out of date.
Right. Yeah,
That's wonderful. But if you're someone doing it on your own, and you know, you're nickel and diming it, you don't really have money to update all of your equipment every few years.
Yeah, that's my situation. Well, listen, fellas, we've done an hour worth of talking. I think we covered a lot of ground, and I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed it, and you know, maybe we can do it again sometime.
I hope we do it again. There's a couple things they didn't get to say tonight, so maybe next time.
Well, go ahead and say them, Doug.
Okay, yes, about Benevolent. Didn't really get talk much about it.
Go ahead.
Okay, just try to keep this short. It's
no rush.
It's okay. Another dichotomy. It's a roommate comedy about orcs and ogres.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the bad guys are actually the protagonist here, and the good guys are like the humans and the elves are like deranged and they're an antagonists. Kind of like the joke is that, kind of like when the joke here is that the bad guys are totally awful at being evil, and the good guys are totally horrible at being good.
So where is that appearing on your DVD?
And not anything. I'm working it up right now.
Okay.
It's kind of based on a dream I had last spring. So far I got a lot of sketches and about 3 finished pieces of promotional art.
Okay.
And a couple of characters are going to have to get renamed anyway.
Well, we look forward to seeing more of that. And if that book that the Tube Punk ever comes out.
Yeah, I've been working on it since 06 or maybe 05 even.
Well, I've got 6 issues of a comic on the shelf that I've penciled in blue, but I'm not great at inking, so I'm inking 1 issue per year. Here in Alaska, they give you money. It's called the Permanent Dividend Fund. Yeah. And it's basically, if you're an Alaska resident, you get some oil money each year. So I use that as like an art grant to publish a book per year. That's what I've been doing. But inking has never been something I'm great at. You know, I always wanted to find my Klaus Janson or my Tom Palmer, but I've never done that. So I end up inking it myself, but I end up drawing tons of stuff and then I go back and ink it. And this has been my modus operandi all along. And I even started drawing in a black colored pencil just so I could scan from my original pencils. Right. And I that's had some good effect for me, but I'm inking now, slow but sure, but I should have a new issue out by the end of the year or right at the start of next. I'm 20 pages in, I think, and got 4 more to go. So, and you're appearing quarterly, or is it bi-monthly in Cartoon Magazine, Joe?
Well, they print every other month, so the 6 times a year, and okay. I've been every issue with 1 or more stories. My reprint book, like I said, I'm trying to get it organized now. I might have to kickstart it, but it's going to get done the end of the year or begin next year, whether it gets kickstarted or not. I'm trying to watch way. It'll have the library number. They'll have the ISBN number. So you should be able to order it off Amazon. It should be able to go in the bookstores. It should be able to be widely available if it can actually drum up the interest.
Okay.
to need it. You know what I mean?
And again, folks, we'll have some links to both Doug and Joe in the below this video. So I suggest you check them out soon and follow what they're doing, because it sounds like we all three got books coming out soon, or stuff in the works at least. So and some of our stuff is still readily available online as well. Again, I want to thank Joe and Doug for dropping by the studio and spending an evening talking with me about comics. I really appreciate it. And don't go away. I want to talk to you after the show as well, but
Okay.
I want to sign off for now. So thank you, Joe.
Bye.
Thank you, Doug.
Okay.
Once again, I want to thank everybody for listening in and tuning in tonight. This has been another episode of Zinc Comics Exposition. I'm your host, Brian Payne. And until next time, remember, think Zinc.